Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Connect series. Today we have Daniel Ogilvie. He's from our SimpleLink software applications team. Thanks for joining, Daniel.
Thanks for having me, Nick.
So I know today you're going to talk to us about ASC Studio.
That's
So I
right.
have many questions. The first of which, what is that and what does that stand for?
Sure. So it stands for the Analog Signal Chain Studio, and it's a tool that we have at TI that utilizes sysconfig to let customers configure and generate code for some of our TI sensing products. So right now we have support for some of our temperature, humidity, and light sensing products.
Okay, got it. And what are some of the benefits? What does that give me if I use ASC Studio?
Sure. So the biggest benefit is it's a graphical way to configure these sensors. But on top of that, it also generates pseudocode to show how to read and write from these sensors. The downside to the pseudocode, though, is you still have to write some sort of implementation layer to talk to whatever microcontroller you're using. But what we've done is actually filled in that gap with our SimpleLink SDK. So when you use ASC Studio with a SimpleLink SDK, you can generate fully functional, ready to run code without having to write a single line of code.
Okay, cool, very cool. And I know people like to hear me ask questions and everything, but I think let's just get into a demo and show us what this thing can do.
Yeah, that sounds great. So what I have on my screen right now is Code Composer Studio. And what I have done is I've imported the empty example from our SimpleLink SDK, in this case for the CC26X2R1 Launchpad. All I need to do is add the ASC Studio product to this example. And what you'll see is that once I do that, I have the ability to add these different sensors that you see here in this window. The specific booster pack I have attached to my Launchpad right now has a TMP116. So I'll go ahead and add that. And you can see it gives me lots of different configuration options. So I can set things like EEPROM values, I can set temperature alerts, I can decide what kind of sampling rate I want to have. But what's really interesting when we combine it with the SimpleLink SDK is I can configure it to use hardware on my microcontroller. So in this case, I'm going to tell it to use the BAS sensor booster pack. And so once I add that, since sysconfig knows a little bit about my system, it recognizes that I need to make a couple changes. And so that's why it gives me this alert. So when I click that, I'm able to set the way I want to power the sensor. So in this case, I want to turn it on all the time. And just like that, I'm ready to go. So you can see without writing a single line of code, I'm ready to compile my project. So go ahead and click Build here. And then I'll open up the generated file view. And you can see it's generating some code very specific to the TMP116, but it's also generating some of these TI driver configs that allow the temperature sensor code to interface with my device. Particularly interesting though is that it actually generates a main.c. And so this is why we don't have to write any code at all. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to exclude the empty.c project from my project. And so now when I build it, the compiler will know to use this generated main.c. So now what I'm going to do is click Debug to load this example code onto my Launchpad, which I have right here. I'm going to go back and open up main.c so you can see what that looks like. And so you can see it's a pretty simple main, but what's interesting is that it's setting a couple different variables to the temperature that's read by the sensor. And so when I go back into my debug view, we have a really cool tool within Code Composer Studio called ROV, Runtime Object View. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And that's actually going to allow me to use the XDS110 on the Launchpad to read memory values from the device. And so this will let me visualize these variables without having to write any code to print them onto a display or print them to the terminal. So what I'm going to do is grab this variable called temp as float Celsius, and so that's just a variable that's going to get updated once per second with the temperature it reads as a Celsius float. And so I'll add that in here. And then the only value I'm interested in is the float, and so I'll do that. And next what I can do is turn on refresh, run my code, and you can see that it's reading out once a second the temperature value. If I put my finger on the temperature sensor to warm it up, you can see that value increase. And when I let go, you'll be able to see it start to decrease. One other thing I'm going to do to show is just to plot it. So this is another tool that's a part of the ROV, and it just lets you graph these variables. So once again, when I put my finger onto the sensor, you'll be able to see the temperature increase. And then when I let go, it'll start to decrease again. So without writing a single line of code, we were able to really quickly evaluate both the SimpliLink SDK and the TMP116 sensor. So just a really quick way to get up and running, evaluating both the sensing products and the SDK from TI.
Awesome. Yeah, it seems like a great way to not only take advantage of TI's broad portfolio, both analog and embedded, or specifically connectivity devices, but it's a really simple way to get up and running very quickly. So very cool. Thanks for showing that to us. And I'm sure everybody's going to be anxious to get started and start playing with it themselves. So how can they do that?
Sure. The best place to get started is to go to ti.com/ASC Studio. We'll have resources including a SimpliLink Academy lab, a technical article, and a tool folder that'll get you up and running really quickly.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll link all those below so that you guys can get started very easily. Daniel, I really appreciate you coming and showing this to us, especially virtually. It's great to see these tools and how they can be used to make development easy. As always, thank you guys for joining us. Don't forget to check out the Connect Series podcast, which is available now, or the other episodes of the Connect Series. As always, we have more great content planned and coming up, so don't forget to check it out. Thanks, guys.